Stephen, you are muted.
So sorry. Did you hear the first part? Because I don't know what happened when it muted. But we are, thank you for being with us today. We're continuing our webinar series. So our time today, we'll introduce ourselves, review the close reading strategy, and then we're going to demonstrate adapting that strategy to social studies with a task asking us to work with images. And we'll talk about that as a source of text throughout our time today. Then we'll have some time for clarity and
Steve, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
all right, so again, this is your webinar team. We are your elementary education associates here. I'm joined today by my colleagues Mandy Hawker, who is the elementary ELA associate, and Brent White, who is our elementary science education associate. We've worked with this project with Dawn Jacobs, who's our math elementary education associate, but she is unable to join us here today. But our goal is that you can see how this strategy is applicable to different content areas. So our purpose today is to strengthen comprehension in content literacy through a close reading strategy involving images and social studies instruction. Because what we're doing here with our goal of this webinar series is to give you a strategy, especially for elementary teachers. We know often you are teaching multiple content areas, so we're trying to expose you to a strategy that you can apply to different content areas. So today we're going to focus on one type of text, which is an image, because in social studies, we want our students to work with a variety of sources of evidence from a variety of different perspectives. And this strategy will allow us to work with different types of text and social studies while giving kids opportunities to use those disciplinary skills that are embedded in our indicators. Again, our session today is going to focus on images as that evidence source, and we're going to put a little plug in for a future webinar that will go deeper into this strategy with different sources as they apply to social studies. So before we dive in, just a little bit of information from the Council of Chief State Supervisors Officers. Their Social Studies Collaborative put together this marginalizational brief several years ago, because as most of you can probably attest to, as you've seen either in your schools or in colleagues' schools, a lot of times social studies is put on the back burner. And there's a lot of evidence out there that the importance of quality social studies is imperative to help prepare our young readers to be deeper thinkers, better readers, and in the case of social studies, better citizens. So in addition to promoting civic engagement, our research shows that elementary students who have rich, authentic experience with science and social studies are likely to improve their overall reading ability. Some studies say sometimes as high as a 33% growth in achievement abilities. So if you're limited for time, certainly in an elementary school, most of us are, we have to provide the best use of that time for instruction, especially in social studies, to get to the intent of our standards and to give students those opportunities to use those embedded skills with a rich variety of evidence. Our data from the end of course review program and for all of our testing summative assessment data, some general strategies applicable to social studies. Now, this is based on the U.S. History and Constitution end of course exam program, but it's applicable to K-12 social studies. Because we want our students to interact with a variety of primary sources, a lot of text-based sources, diaries, memoirs, letters. We want them to look at database, charts, and graphs. We want them working with maps, and a lot of visual-based stimuli as well, political cartoons, photographs, and images. And we want students to practice summarizing and especially using close reading strategies with these primary sources to get relevant information from that source to complete a question or a specific task that's provided and created by the teacher. So today we're going to be working with one image source, because as our kids get more proficient in working with a variety of sources, we are helping them become better readers. Reading assessments require a lot of background knowledge. Poor readers with a strong background knowledge usually display better reading comprehension than strong readers with low background knowledge. And again, back to data, second graders who had 60 lessons of literacy-rich social studies instruction scored 23% higher on reading assessments. So in social studies, our kids have to look at a variety of types of sources. On the left there are just a lot of different types of sources we want our kids to be working with. And on the right are all of the skills that our students use in social studies. With the exception, and these aren't marked on this slide, I apologize, but up here for the historical thinking skills, with the exception of periodization and contextualization, students are exposed in an age-appropriate manner to all of these skills in the primary grades. So just a little shout out. It's so important that we have social studies taught to our earliest learners because they're starting to practice using these skills that they will use throughout their entire career. And if in doing so, if you have seen the new ELA standards, we have these overarching expectations. And when you look at these overarching expectations in general, this is what we want in a good social studies classroom, especially when we get kids working with evidence to explain or justify their reasonings. We have an evidence indicator in every standard that requires students to use the use of energy and use of evidence, pardon me. So I'd like to take a moment and just review the close reading strategy. And if you have been in our series through this whole time, you've seen this introduced by Mandy and then put into practice in a science context with Brent just a couple weeks ago. So a quick overview, let's summarize some of this work that Mandy introduced us to this strategy. A method of text analysis allows us to focus on specific details for kids to get that deeper meaning. And it is applicable and transferable to multiple content areas. So this is just some examples. I would just like you to pause for a moment, and these are some of the things that were suggested of what close reading could look like. I just want you to take about 10 seconds to look at some of these different ideas. And I want to highlight the very first bullet, using short passages and excerpts. That is essential in social studies. You're not going to have your kids read the whole Constitution. You're going to find that example, that excerpt from that Constitution that is applicable to the task and, of course, for developmentally appropriate for your students. The beauty of, and I call this Mandy's structure because this is how she introduced it to us. This is can be adjusted based on your content area and depending on the task, especially this second step of when we're really getting into a little bit about the source in hand. So you can vary all of these steps depending on your task. And I did like, and I think we have a link for this. Mandy suggested a lesson plan, which is really good when you're working with sources, especially with elementary kids with their first time using some of these sources, to give you that clear reminder of what are you having your kids do each time they look at this source, because you're going to give them a different purpose each time. So what does that look like for social studies? How does that relate to social studies? We're going to share, this is a suggestion of how you could use this strategy with social studies content. So what I'd like for you to do, we're going to do a waterfall activity with the chat. So if you'd get ready to respond in the chat, and when I say hit enter, I'm going to have everyone hit enter so we'll see all of the responses at once. Please know there is no judgment here. This is for you. We are here as a community of learners talking about close reading and what that can look like in social studies. So I'd like you to rate yourself and get ready to, don't hit enter until I say, but thinking of your classroom practices, we're probably all at different places. How are you using social studies? Excuse me, how are you using close reading in social studies? One, you're not using it at all. Two, you have an idea of how it could apply. Three, you're ready to improve what you're doing. Or four, you've used it, you feel good about it, and you want to be more intentional and really get it paired with those skills that are embedded in our discipline, in our standards in each indicator. So if you'd rate yourself 1, 2, 3, 4, put that in the chat and hit enter.
And Stephen, in the chat so far, we have lots of 3s and 4s, with a mix of a little bit of 2s.
Okay.
And I love Amber's. She says 4 and wish I had more time though, which we can all relate to, I think.
Yes. So hopefully, again, this strategy can be an opportunity to save some time as a way to help deepen our integration practices. So one thing to consider for social studies and how are students practicing, we have skills in our indicators. There's content they have to learn, and we're expecting students to use sources. So how do we juggle all this as a teacher with everything else that we've got to do as well? So just some points to help you remember. To make sure you look at the indicator and really take some time to make sure you are providing students with an opportunity that they are going to learn this material that they have to know that's included in that indicator. Use the alignment guide to help you select content that the student should know to use those skills to uncover. And this is it's work, but it's the fun part for me. When you're creating a task, what are you asking students to do to use that skill with the content, with those sources? So think of it as that kind of that trio that have to go hand in hand when we're planning instruction. How are you using the sources? How is it tying to the skill? And how are those sources allowing kids to use the skill to kind of explore that content? And we're going to practice that today. And in our purposes, if you can imagine, this is kind of a little narrow lens as a part of a bigger unit. So anytime you're planning, I want you to view this strategy as a part of a lesson. But when you're actually doing your planning, just a reminder to consider, are you looking for a narrow or broad approach to this task? So this close reading strategy can be used regardless if you have a narrow or broad approach to this specific content that you were getting ready to uncover with your kids. But you can use this, and again, and I mentioned this other webinar series, we'll take a deeper dive into looking at close reading with a variety of types of sources. So I'd like to go through a demonstration that actually uses this strategy as applied, as you could use it in a social studies class. Specifically, we're going to work with images today. So I would like you at this point to kind of look through, for this next couple of bit of work that we're going to do, I would like for you to please look through this as the lens from a student lens. And if you can kind of imagine you're in my 5th grade class, it's at the start of the school year, and we are getting ready to get into standard 1. which is looking at the industrialization of the United States and South Carolina between 1860 and 1910, and what is happening in our country as we're growing and creating tensions and adding to this culture of our nature. So if you are, again, I'd like you to kind of think of the lens of a student. And if you don't teach fifth grade, if you're not familiar with this content, perfect, because we can just talk about the strategy. Just a little disclaimer. I would want y'all to know I was not a history major. I was an anthropology major. I used to be an archaeologist, so I was not a history major. You don't have to be a history major to be a good social studies teacher. I want you to know that, certainly when you're an elementary generalist. So you're in my fifth grade class. We're at the start of the year. And what I'm going to ask y'all to do, students, my boys and girls, we're going to be looking at some images today, just to have you think, what can you pull from these images? And I just want you to make an inference about this time period. So we're going to be looking at some images from about around 1900. And I would just like you to, here's your task. You're just going to look at these images right now, and you're going to make an inference about what you can infer just from your gut. So quickly, you're going to see three images here. And I'm going to set my timer here for about a minute. And what I'd like for you to do is just take some time and make note of what you notice. There were three images here. If you would see just do a quick scan, what catches your eye? There might be something in one image that really catches your eye. You might notice one thing in each image. There is no wrong answer here. So I'm going to set the timer, and I just want you to scan these images and make note of what you notice.
And Stephen, would you like them to do this on a note paper or go ahead and type in the chat?
You can just do it on notebook paper. This is just for y'all. Thank you, Brent. All right, if you could, someone would be willing to unmute and just share what you noticed. What's the first thing you noticed in one of these images? Anyone willing to unmute and just share what you observed? Share the first thing you noticed.
All women and typewriters.
Old woman and typewriters, okay.
I noticed they were all in black and white.
Okay.
I feel like they all relate to business in some way.
Okay, it's making an inference. They all kind of could relate to business.
Early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I see that there's appears to be electrical lights or some kind of electrical something in all three images.
Okay.
So.
All right. Excellent. So we could, in our classroom, if I could be writing all these down on a whiteboard. We could have done them in the chat. Lots of different ways we could do that just to kind of see what our thoughts. Great observations, great notices. So thank you very much. So we're going to go back. It is so important. This is from my experience working with elementary kids, and as some of you may have experienced, when you may have some students in your class and you're giving them the first taste of social studies, a true social studies lessons they maybe have ever had. They may not have had great social studies before. We don't know that. So it's so important to debrief when working with images. So we're getting ready to go into our second read. But this is just an example of what I could. Let's make sure we're all on the same page, boys and girls. What types of images are these? Could anyone unmute and take a stab? What types of images do you think these are? Is there anything you could check off on the left that you could use to classify these types of images to maybe help our other historians out? And it's okay if you're wrong. It's just an info. Any guesses on the types of images here? I'm going to use someone's language. I think it was, and I'm sorry, I didn't get everyone's name who was sharing, but someone shared old woman with typewriters. So I would argue then that image one is maybe an action picture. It's showing some action in that picture, showing they're doing some action.
Image 3 is landscape.
Okay, excellent. Showing a landscape, yeah. I'm just going to throw this out there. Could image 2 be a picture of a family? I saw Brent kind of say, oh, I don't know, maybe. We don't, I mean, so we could have some questions about some of these images.
Yes.
I would say 2 could be maybe an action. I see I think I see horse and buggies over on the side of the road over on the right. You know, and the bicycle, those type things. So I would say action for that.
Okay, excellent. And thank you all so much for your feedback. And let's see, that was Renee. So Renee just inadvertently gave a wonderful segue to the next part of what we're going to do with these images. So we're going to move into a second read of these images. Because what I'm wanting you to do, students, is I'd like you to go through these images and let's deepen our inference. We heard some great observations of what people saw. So I'm going to go back. Someone noticed the dates, so we kind of know a time frame of what we're talking about. This time, I really want you to take it a little bit deeper and look at these images and try to hone in on what are you seeing that is similar between these 3 images. And I'm going to share a strategy with you to help you take a deeper look at these images. So here are the images that we're going to look at. But I'm going to introduce this strategy to you that I love, and I've had kids love this strategy. Y'all, I don't know where I got it from. It was either from the Library of Congress or Frank Baker, and both organizations say they didn't come up with this, so I have no idea where I stole this from. Been using it for years. I think it's great. So we are going to use this strategy to dive into these images, but we're going to use, I just call it the quadrant activity. So specifically, while we look at this image, I want you to list the people, objects, or any actions that you see as we look at this image. So we're going to look at one of these together. So just take about 15 seconds to look at this entire image. Okay. Right. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to reveal one quadrant at a time. And you will have 35 seconds to look at each quadrant and jot down what is it that you're seeing. Do you see any actions? Do you see any people? Do you see any objects? And obviously we're doing this electronically, not just sharing a strategy. If you use the same picture size, typically get a piece of cardstock and cut a square out, and then you can have this real fancy tool for your kids to use over pictures so they can look at each quadrant. And again, this activity is very adjustable. I've done this with kids where they haven't looked at the picture first because each quadrant is kind of revealing something. Then we look at the whole picture together. So depending on your task, you can adjust this. So take about 35 seconds and take a deeper dive into this quadrant and make note of what you're seeing. Set the timer. Okay, I'm going to ask you to repeat with quadrant 2. All right, going to have you repeat quadrant 3. And let's look at quadrant 4. All right, if anyone would like to unmute and just, could you share something that you observed under the quadrant observation that you didn't notice from your first look? I know for me, when I looked at it in quadrants, I was able to really see the different businesses. When I first look, Gillette safety razor was what popped up. But when I got into quadrants, I was really seeing all the different types of businesses.
And mine was just the opposite. I saw the businesses first. I didn't even notice like the sand and the stairs. And so mine was the opposite.
Okay.
I noticed more names of particular places like that. Looks like Brady's Bats.
And Amanda said that she saw the Woolworths.
Okay. So what I'd like for you to do, I don't have these, because we practiced with the quadrant, and for the sake of our time on a webinar, here are the other 2 images. I don't have them displayed in quadrants, but I would like you as a part of this second read, I've removed that image 3, but could you look at these other images to see what other similarities can you find with these 2 images with source 3 that we did a little deeper dive with quadrants. Can you take another minute and really look for other similarities between these images? And anything else you may notice.
I more intently looked at image 2 and started looking for the names of the businesses. And then went back to image 1 and see if there was any clues to a company name on there as well.
I looked at the women's clothing and the long dresses that they were wearing and the similarities with the way of their presentation.
Okay.
Each image also shows the use of electricity.
Okay. All right. Great connection there.
I feel like every image too is evidence of some kind of new invention or something that has recently entered society. And that one on the right, is that I'm trying to figure out, is that a track for electric cars? I can't tell on the right.
Yes, ma'am. I believe
Looks
it
like
is.
a railroad track there.
Yeah.
But it seems like in each, I'm starting to see that all of them represent various sundry inventions that all occurred kind of at the same time. You know, they were all starting to notice that.
Excellent. Thank you all for sharing. And I just had this, and I've, okay, disclaimer, I put this together with my colleagues, so I've looked at these before. I just made a connection that I've never made before, so I'm sorry to share, which I think is, and I piggybacked off of, that's what I love about piggybacking off of other people's comments. Brent made the comment on image 1 of all those ladies kind of in uniforms. I've made a connection back to all of these businesses, and then it makes me wonder, okay, is that a requirement here? Is this some work regulation here that they're required to wear some uniform because all the ladies look like they're wearing it very similar? Or is that just the fashion of the day? I'm acting like a kid here. I don't know. So that's an inquiry question that I could bring to this based off of feedback from y'all or comments from y'all. So we kind of, let's talk about some of these together. And again, for all of our students, but especially in elementary kids, they need opportunities to talk with each other. We've got to get that dialogue and talking about these sources. So let's just have a conversation. Can anyone infer why some of these pictures were taken? Or who took these pictures? Any guesses? Or why were these pictures taken? And again, y'all, there's no wrong answer. Just give your inference for what you're thinking.
They may have been taken to encourage people to kind of migrate to the cities, these growing cities.
Okay. All right, so on the chat, could image 1 be taken for a newspaper? And whoever made that comment, I think this about the advertise, I wonder if image 3 could be that same purpose. Encouraging people to come to Atlantic City. Look at all these businesses that are here. Anyone have any questions about any of these images at this time?
And Stephen, we have some more in the chat. Someone noticed what you said, business owners took these photos to promote their businesses.
Ah, okay.
And then someone put image 1 could support, was taken to support women in the workforce.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So looking at these images again, I'm going to ask you, what can you pull? I'm going to show you what the task is. So as you're looking at these images, What are you able to pull from these sources to help you complete the task? And your task is, as you're looking at these images and hearing the comments of your classmates, how do these images provide context for what was happening at this time period? And what do you think some possible impacts were? I'm just going to give you time to ponder. All right, boys and girls. So I'm talking again like you're in my fifth grade class, y'all. Some of your other historians, as we looked at some of these images earlier, they were making some great connections and some great inferences. So we're getting ready to start our first big unit. So what do you think is going on at this time in our country? What might we be exploring in the next couple of weeks here based on what you've pulled from these images?
Maybe inventors and inventions, the progressive era, when technology was, we were industrial revolution. We've got new inventions coming, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And we have a couple in the chat thinking about societal changes that businesses are opening and women are allowed to be in the workforce.
Okay.
And then showing industry, something about the moving to cities, which someone touched on before. And image 1 and 3 might possibly support a great change in how advertising can impact economic growth.
Okay. Excellent. And all of those things, industrialization, urbanization, the first comment about new inventions. This is a very exciting time in our country where we're going to be exploring the Industrial Revolution and getting into a lot of the whys behind our country's growth during this time. All right, so now I'm going to shift. Thank you all for kind of humoring me when I called you boys and girls, just to kind of make sure we're all in that school lens. But now I would like you to kind of switch your lens for that instructor side. So I've kind of modeled this strategy. We kind of practiced it together. And again, this was intentionally aligned with a fifth grade indicator, but from teaching multiple grades in elementary school, I think this strategy could be very applicable to any grade level. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time, and I love social studies and I get so excited. I feel like I was on fire. This webinar was supposed to be an hour. We're at 40 minutes. So I hope I haven't gone too fast for y'all. So I would like this time for some clarity and closure that I want to help you. Feel free to unmute, but this is the overview of the steps presented by that we first were exposed to with Mandy in our first session. And I hope you see how I was able to take her steps and tweak them. And images, I would argue, are a great tool to use with our students because they're kind of equalizing. There isn't a lot of heavy text for our lower readers or multi-language learners. So images I argue, are a great way to start with some social studies with our students.
And Stephen, earlier you mentioned that there were some other sources that we didn't have time to look at. Could you go back and review those other sources for them?
For different types of close reading?
Yeah, the different types of primary, secondary sources. Yeah.
Yep, we're gonna, if you can give me one second, I'm gonna hop that up in just a minute. Because I'm gonna go over, because we are wanting our kids, so last, Brandy and Brandy. I made up new names. Mandy and Brent worked with y'all on text. So we work with text and social studies. That cross out poetry would be so applicable to help your colleagues learn about our standards, or to help kids learn some content when you're giving them a primary or a secondary source. We want our kids working with images. We want them working with maps, charts, graphs, diaries, excerpts, quotes. And again, we don't want the whole article, that whole primary source, but an excerpt from our kids. So before getting into some of these again, to give you a little teaser, if you could just rate yourself, kind of these same questions that I asked you earlier. We're going to do a waterfall enter. But hopefully we'll see the 2s that have moved up to a 3, I hope. So if you would hit enter and tell us, are you using it at all? You have an idea, you're ready, or now you are definitely for more intentional, ready to go forward to connect social studies disciplinary skills with a reading strategy.
Getting lots of 3s and 4s, which is great.
Excellent. Does anyone have a question about what we were working with today before I move to wrap up with a couple of other slides? Should you think of one after, my contact information will be here at the end. Do not hesitate to reach out. Especially if you're trying to improve social studies instruction, because that's my favorite. So here's your social studies team. So it's Shelley, Christy, and I. Christy and I are on the standard side. Shelley works in our test development side of our office, but the 3 of us collaborate on everything. So you have a great social studies team here supporting you. Again, here is our reading in the content area team. And as I teased earlier, social studies requires our students to work with a variety of different source types. We have an evidence indicator for every standard, and we want our kids working with a variety of sources. This close reading strategy can be applied to these different source types. So I am interested to see if any of y'all, there's a QR code and a tiny URL. This is just a super brief survey that I'm trying to gain some data to see about a follow-up. I'd love to do a follow-up webinar series that would help us work with these different types of sources, work more deeply with text, work with political cartoons, how to read, close read maps, and charts and graphs. So we would do these, I envision this as a webinar series, maybe 4 or 5 little series sessions to explore different types of evidence sources that we want to use in our K-5 classrooms. So if you are interested, would love some feedback if this is a type of professional learning that you'd be interested in, to how to kind of keep working with this strategy.
I love this.
And the last item I have for you, just like you have your reviews and you try to grow as a professional, we do that as well with our feedback. Your honest feedback is appreciated, and it's needed for us to make our sessions better. So there's a URL that's going to be that you can enter, or use the QR code. This is our office feedback form. You can call this session Close Reading